Howdy, and thank you for having interest in the work we do here at Ohio State University. As many of you know, Ohio State University is a land-grant institution that is living out President Abraham Lincoln's goal of providing information and education to the citizens and producers of the state. We hope that this webinar is useful to you as you take the tools available in the 2018 Farm Bill and apply them to your operation to help mitigate the exposure to risk. During this webinar, we'll cover the Agricultural Risk Coverage Program and the Price Loss Coverage programs that are authorized in the commodity title of the 2018 Farm Bill. More information about the different titles within this Farm Bill, along with other programs available, is available in an additional webinar that we'll show you here in just a second on how you can access that. In start, I'd like to thank my co-authors, Mary Griffith and Chris Zoller, for helping and partnering in this project. To start, the information that you will see available, it will be available at the Farm Management tab located in the Department of Agriculture, Environmental and Development Economics. That link there at the top takes you to that tab along with the webinars link there highlighted at the bottom. There are several other resources available at Ohio State to assist producers, one of those being the Farm Office. That site is ran by Barry Ward and Peggy Hall. They do amazing work and provide a lot of information and resources available to Ohio's producers. This presentation, along with additional resources for the 2018 Farm Bill, can be found at both of those sites by just clicking on the Farm Bill link. It takes you to this welcome page where we have information about the dairy program. We have a frequently asked questions page where we log all the questions we get asked, find answers for them, and put them on the website, along with decision aids, additional webinars, and then information about the commodity programs that we're going to discuss here along this tab here on the left-hand side. Ohio State University will be providing a series of county-based workshops to producers around the state. So be sure to check out this county-based, meeting selection here where we're showing you the dairy meetings that we did around the state. We have a list of county crop meetings for ARC and PLC that we'll be doing around the state as well. So make sure to check that out as we move forward. And all that information is available at this website. So let's talk about the decisions that need to be made by producers based on the 2018 Farm Bill for the ARC County, ARC Individual, and then the Price Loss Coverage or PLC programs. The first one is that this Farm Bill is authorizing a new decision. So in the 2014 Farm Bill, producers were given the choice between those programs, and that decision lasted for 5 years of the Farm Bill. It was a one-time decision for 5 years. This Farm Bill is authorizing a new decision. However, your first decision here in 2019 will be for both 2019 and 2020. So it is a 2-year decision up front. Then after 2020, it becomes an annual decision. So producers get to make a new decision and a new election in 2021, 2022, and 2023. However, this first one for the 2019 program year, producers need to make their decision by March 15th of 2020. And then annually, this decision will be made on March 15th. So March 15th is an important day. For the 2019 program, if you do not make a decision by March 15th, you lose your option to enroll in a program. You automatically just default back to what you had selected in the 2014 Farm Bill, and you lose any payments that could be triggered in the 2019 program. So it's important to get signed up before March 15th. Now this decision is, again, both for 2019 and 2020. So there are thoughts and impressions that we have that we'll walk through in terms of how you should make your decision. The second bullet point down here talks about what I just said in terms of the decision for 2019 needs to be made by March 15th, or you lose your payment for 2019 and your 2020 decision automatically defaults to what you had in the previous Farm Bill. There will be a yield update for the price loss coverage yields, and we have more information about what that entails and how that decision can be made. We also have a decision tool along with a separate webinar on how to use our PLC decision or PLC update tool. But farmers, this Farm Bill allowed producers and owners the ability to update PLC yields in 2020. Now, those yield updates can be made now, and they're based on historical yields. And so you can go ahead and make that update if you'd like. You can also choose not to update your yields and keep your previous yield that you have on record with the county FSA office, and that is totally fine. Again, that is the owner's decision. The owner of the land gets to make the decision on the PLC update, or producers that have power of attorney for their owners. Looking at the Farm Bill timeline, just real quick, what we have laid out here at the top, again, these are marketing years, so September of 2019 all the way to October of 2020. Now we've laid this out because September is the start of the marketing year for both corn and soybeans, but this calendar also fits for wheat and all the other commodities that don't have the marketing year at the same point. But what we see here is in the green is represented when you can make an election or a choice. Red is where you cannot. And so it is important to know when these deadlines are and to make sure that you're at least getting in to see your FSA office to make sure that everything is taken care of and you're not missing out on any potential risk management payments that come down the road. As we just talked about, the 2019 enrollment for ARC and PLC is open right now and runs through March 15th. The 2020 enrollment, which again is the same decision that you made in 2019, you cannot change to a different program. But you do get the option to enroll separately if you change farm practices. For instance, if you rent instead of cash, or if you crop share now instead of cash rent, or if you change, a tenant, a landlord or something, those changes can be made in 2020 all the way to the end of June of 2020. Okay, but both programs are currently open. It has to be the same decision, so it makes sense for us to go in and make choices and decisions for both 19 and 20 at the same point. Now, because the ARC County program is a yield-based program on what yields actually are, it makes reasonable sense to us here at Ohio State that to at least wait until the crops come out of the ground here in 2019. We all know that we had a rough harvest, or excuse me, a rough planting, and it's turning into a late harvest here in the Eastern Corn Belt. We still don't know what yields and prices are going to be this year, and we probably won't know for quite a while. So therefore, it makes sense for us to wait until maybe January, February, or March to make your decision, because then you have more information available to you. And more information always leads to a better decision-making process. Now, several of you will probably be going into your FSA office in December to sign up for your market facilitation payments. If you're a dairy operation, you're also going to want to go in December and sign up for the new dairy margin coverage program for 2020. So if you're in the FSA office and your FSA officer or county director just says, hey, while you're in here, why don't you sign up for ARC and PLC? It is your right to come in later and sign up for ARC and PLC if you'd like, or if you choose, you can go ahead and sign up then. And we encourage you to at least use our decision tools that we've got available to help make your decision a little bit easier. As you see, that future enrollment, so after 2020, so we're talking about 2021, 2022, and 2023, the enrollment period is going to go from October 1st to March 15th. So March 15th is going to be an important day. Should be easy to remember because that's the crop insurance deadline. So what I've been telling producers is when you go and file for your crop insurance, just go on down the road and to the FSA office and sign up for your ARC and PLC as well. Make sure you're doing that. Now, again, this first decision is going to be for 2 years. So it's going to be after 2020 that then you're going to be making annual decisions. It doesn't matter when you sign up for ARC and PLC, you're still going to get your payments at the same time. So this next line, this 2018 ARC County PLC payments, payments for 2018 should be coming and hitting mailboxes soon. We had very few counties trigger ARC County payments here in Ohio in 2018 that'll be made here this month in October, or excuse me, in October. We only had about 4 or 5 counties each, corn and soybeans, trigger ARC County payments. However, every county or every producer that was enrolled in the PLC program in the 2014 Farm Bill will get a corn PLC program payment because the corn market year average price came in below the reference price of $3.70 for corn. However, the marketing year average price for soybeans remained above the reference price of $8.40, and so no PLC payments will be made for soybeans in Ohio. So again, just a couple of counties triggered ARC County corn and soybean payments. Every producer that chose PLC should get a corn payment, but no PLC payment for soybeans. What we see down here in the next line, this 2019 ARC and PLC payments, what this says is no matter when you make your decision, whether it's in October or whether it's in February, the ARC and PLC payments, if payments are triggered, are going to come in in October of 2020. So whether you sign up early or you sign up late, you're still getting your payments in October. It's to your benefit as a producer to wait, get some more information to make a better decision. So therefore, we encourage producers to wait until at least the crops come out of the ground. We have a better idea what county yields are going to look like and what national price is going to look like. Again, in 2020, Owners of the land get an option to update PLC yields, and we've got that down here on the bottom. So a PLC update from October all the way until the end of September in 2020. Again, this is the owner's decision. We have a decision tool and a webinar specifically related to the PLC update, and so we ask you to take a look at it. Again, these programs operate very similar to what they did in the 2014 Farm Bill. Very little has changed, but I'll walk through some of the changes here in just a second. But there are three separate programs: the Agriculture Risk Coverage Program, the Agriculture Risk Individual Program, and the Price Loss Coverage Program. The Agriculture Risk Coverage County Program and the Agriculture Risk Coverage Individual Program are both revenue programs. They're based on historical revenue of a county, and any time that the current year revenue falls below a historic benchmark, a payment is triggered. However, the difference is that agriculture risk, the county option, pays on 85% of your base acres, and an individual coverage option only pays on 65% of those base acres. Now, you'll remember that base acres are a historical representation of what had been planted on that land in previous years. This Farm Bill does not allow for a base acre update. The 14 Farm Bill did, the 2018 Farm Bill does not. So you are not allowed to update or change your base acres. So they're the same as what you had in the 2014 Farm Bill. You're also not allowed to add base acres. So if you bought some extra land that previously did not have base acres, you do not get to buy, or you do not get to add additional base acres. So just important to know that both ARC County and ARC Individual are revenue-based programs. They protect against low revenue. But the ARC County option is based on paid on 85% of your base acres, not what you plant. The ARC Individual program is paid on 65% of your base acres, also not what you plant. It's what those historical base acres look like. The Price Loss Coverage Program is to protect against low price. It is also paid on 85% of your base acres and based on a national price, not your local price. However, if you do choose your price loss coverage, then you are eligible, if you would like, to buy the supplemental coverage option under crop insurance policies when it is available. Now, it's available in most places in Ohio, and it's a way to get cheaper coverage if you choose. Now, you are giving up a little bit of the variation because you're going to an area-based policy, so it's important to familiar yourself with what an area-based crop insurance policy looks like. In 2019, because some producers had area-based policies, they did not qualify for prevent plant coverage because prevent plant coverage does not pay on area-based crop insurance policies. So that's one downside of an area-based policy, but it is cheaper if you feel like you don't expect to need prevent plant in a year, and you're looking at getting higher coverage, insurance coverage at a lower rate. So just something to keep in mind. Nationally, in the last Farm Bill, 7% of corn acres were enrolled in the PLC coverage option. 3% soybean and 42% of wheat acres were enrolled in PLC. Ohio had much lower coverage rates. Most of our producers chose the ARC County option. Very few were enrolled in the ARC Individual option. The majority were enrolled in the County ARC Coverage Program, or the Agriculture Risk Coverage Program. And so we're probably going to need to familiarize ourselves with what this price loss coverage program does and if it's a better option for us in the 2018 Farm Bill. Again, we have decision tools available to you if you would like to use them. And we encourage you to at least check them out and play with the what if scenarios, just so you're understanding how you're protected if there is a year where we have low yields, high yields, low price, or a high price. Just things to keep in mind. So what changed from the 2014 Farm Bill? Really not a lot on the programmatic side. As I just mentioned, we have the same three program options available to us. One of the big changes I think producers are really going to like, and I've already mentioned, is that there's an annual enrollment that starts in 2021. So 2019, 2020, again, are a decision made together. But then starting in 2021, an annual decision gets to be made every year. Yields for the ARC County program are now going to be based off crop insurance or RMA yields instead of the National Ag Statistics surveys. These are actual yields that are recorded within the crop insurance program instead of surveys passed out by farmers. I would note that the National Ag Statistics Service does a really good job on estimating final yields. In our analysis here at Ohio State, we find that some counties will benefit from this change and that RMA yields have traditionally been a little higher than the National Ag Statistics Service yields. However, there are other counties where the National Ag Statistics Service yields have been higher than the Risk Management Agency yields. And so depending on that will change your benefit, or whether it's a benefit to your county. But it's just important to know that this farm bill, the yields will be based off RMA yields instead of the National Ag Statistics Service. This farm bill will also take into account trend adjusted yields. So very similar to your crop insurance historical production, they'll take into account a trend adjusted yield, and there's a higher plug yield. So the 2014 Farm Bill used 70% of your county average as a plug yield in case your county yields were extremely low. There was a plug yield of 70% of your county average. In the 2018 Farm Bill, that has moved up to 80% of your county transition yield. So just something that both of these changes, both on terms of a trend adjusted yield and a higher plug yield, help raise the historical benchmark. When the historical benchmark is higher, that increases the probability that our county is going to trigger a payment. The next thing is payments are now going to be located or be based on the location of the crop and not on the administrative county. In the previous Farm Bill, there was extreme variation between counties. Some counties triggered an ARC County payment, some did not. And so what you see here is that you see the Farm Service Agency saying, we're going to give all whether a farm has acreage in 2 counties, 5 counties, or 1 county, they're going to receive the same payment for all their acres, and it's going to be based on a weighted percentage of what percentage of the acres were based in the county that triggered a payment or triggered payments. We see increases to the marketing loan rates. This will help free up some cash in the early season in case producers need some more cash on hand to pay some early season discounting or take advantage of some grain marketing. Those marketing loan rates also get figured into the price loss coverage as they serve as the cap of how big the of how big the price loss coverage program can pay out payments. We also see additional irrigation and non-irrigation rates. For Ohio, there are 4 counties that now qualify for irrigated corn acreage. There are 9 counties that qualify for irrigated soybean acreage, and there are 0 counties in Ohio that qualify for irrigated wheat acreage. So just something to keep in mind. If you don't have irrigated acres, you don't have to worry about that. But if you do have irrigated acres and you are located in those counties, you now have programs that separate the two between irrigated and non-irrigated. So those are the good things that I think are positive to producers. Here are some of the things you're probably not as happy. Again, as I mentioned earlier, there is no base acre update. So you aren't allowed to update base. You're also not allowed to add base acres like like you had previously in earlier farm bills. And one of the other disadvantages is that if you've had acres that have been planted to grass, have been pastured or idled since between January 1st of 2009 and December 31st of 2017. So if it was pasture, grass, or idle during all those years during that time, you lose your ARC and PLC payments. You get to keep your base acres, but you no longer get to have your ARC and PLC payments. Instead, what you get is you can enroll in the Grassland Conservation Initiative, which is under the Conservation Stewardship Program, for $18 an acre. So you no longer get payments. You get to keep your base, but you can now enroll under this Grasslands Conservation Initiative program for $18 an acre. There's still the government sequestration of 6.2%. That was part of the Budget Act of 2011. We see that government sequestration in there. So every government payment that is triggered is docked at 6.2% to help alleviate the budget deficit. So just a reminder what the Agriculture Risk Coverage Program is. It's a revenue protection program. It makes payments when revenue, your actual year revenue, falls below 86% of a historical benchmark. Again, that 86% is just set into a law. So I'll show you some graphs here in just a second. We'll walk through an example. You are not required to plant the crop on those acres. It's based on your base acre. So if you plant soybeans, but your base is on corn, you're going to get a corn payment, not a soybean payment. For some producers, this gets confusing. When they have soybean acres, their base is in corn, but the soybean program triggers a payment and corn does not. And they're confused of why they don't get a corn or a soybean payment. Well, it's because the corn acres, your acreage was in corn base, right? And you did not have soybean base on that farm. And the corn program did not trigger a payment. So just something to keep in mind. There are 2 options here. The Agriculture Risk County option is 5-year Olympic average. Again, Olympic is a 5-year average where you take out the high and the low and average the remaining 3 years of both county yields and average prices. It can be made commodity by commodity. So you can select ARC County for corn and price loss coverage for soybeans, and ARC County for wheat if you'd like. And then there's the ARC County individual option, which is basically the same thing, only on an individual level. And so it's a 5-year average, Olympic average, weighted for all the commodities that you plant on your farm. Now, this option is based for your farm specifically, not the county. It's made on 65% of the base acres, as we talked about earlier, instead of 85% of the base acres. It's based on individual yields, and it can be elected. It has to be elected for all the commodities on the farm. So you cannot elect ARC County individual for corn and choose PLC for soybeans. You have to choose ARC County for all the commodities on your farm. For the ARC County program, payments are maxed at 10% of the benchmark rate. That's just the payment cap. So whatever that benchmark comes out to, it's 10% of that. That's the highest your payment you can give. Let's walk through an example illustratively. What I've got here is our benchmark revenue is 5-year Olympic average market price, or the reference price, whichever one's higher, and we'll talk about the reference price here in just a second, times a 5-year Olympic average of county yields, and that creates your benchmark. We're going to reduce that benchmark by 86%, and that's going to form this dotted black line here, which is our guaranteed county revenue. Anytime that our actual current year revenue comes in below that black line, we generate a payment, which is signified here in this final bar. The actual county revenue, the current year actual county revenue is the multiplication of the national marketing year average price, so the national price, times the county yields in your county, right? And if that comes in below this dotted black line, a payment is triggered. If it is above this black line, no payment is triggered. And we see here that the farm payment is the payment rate, or the difference between this black line and our gray bar, times the number of base acres that we have on our farm, times 85%, because it's only paid on 85% of our acreage, and then reduced by that 6.2% sequestration. So this is how the ARC County program makes payments, right? Let's walk through an example, illustrate mathematically. Now this county, I've selected a county at random. These numbers are also at random. But I selected this program. The 2018 Farm Bill adds a 1-year lag in for prices and yields. So we're going to take 5 years and skip the directly preceding year. So for 2019, we're going to skip 2018, and we're going to use years 2013 through 2017. We've got our county-based yields here. Again, we're going to substitute any yields that fall below a substitute yield, and in our tool, we have that substitute yield included. But we're going to take our 5 years. We're going to drop the lowest. So our lowest is this 132. Our highest is this 188. So we're going to drop both of them, and we're going to average the 3 remaining, 160, 153, and 164. That gets us an Olympic average yield of 159. We're going to do the same thing on the prices side. We're going to take the effective reference price, or the reference price, which for corn is $3.70. For soybeans, it's $8.40. And for wheat, it's $5.50. And we have a list of reference prices on our website. But we're going to subtract out any years where the reference price is below, or the marketing year average price, which for corn is again from September 1st to August 31st. If that reference price comes in lower than if our marketing price comes in lower than our reference price, we're going to substitute in the reference price. And so in this case, we're going to drop the high and low price. So for this, I've got a reference price of $3.76, and again, these are just random prices. I just type stuff in here. But we're going to get rid of $3.76. We're also going to drop the $3.70 in 2015. Now, the reason I put random prices in here and didn't use the actual prices is because all of these would be $3.70. We've had consistently lower than the reference price marketing year average yield, or average prices for corn, and so this would be. But if we drop the high and the low, we get an Olympic average price of $3.72. So if we go back and we look at our benchmark, we're going to take that 5-year Olympic average price times our 5-year Olympic average yields, and we're going to get our benchmark. So if we do that, we drop our 159 here, our Olympic average yields. We're going to bring that down here to column A. We're going to take our 372 Olympic average prices, and we're going to bring that down here to column B. We're going to multiply those by each other to get column C. We're going to reduce that by 86%. So that's at 508.67. And if we go back, that's represented here by this black line. That 508.67 is this black line right here. We're going to figure out what our max payment can be. Again, that's 10% of our benchmark. So we're going to take 10% of column C, and that gets us $59.15. So that's the highest amount of payment we can get per acre. Our actual price in 2019, let's say, comes in at $330. It's likely going to be higher than that. But let's just say our actual price for 2019 comes in at $330, which is column F. Column G is our actual yield for the county. So let's say our actual yields for the county are 150. We're going to multiply column F, our 330, times our column G, our 150 yield, and we're going to get a 2019 revenue of $495. What we do is this is our actual revenue. So if we go back to our illustration, our actual revenue is represented by this final bar out here. We want to now know how big it is in comparison to that benchmark. So if we go back here, we're going to take our 86% benchmark, our 508, and we're going to subtract out that 495, and we're going to get a formula rate of $13.67. Now, we have to compare that to our cap. If this formula rate was bigger than our 10% cap or bigger than this $59, we would be limited at $59. However, our formula rate is below that $59, and so our payment per acre is $13.67. Now remember that we're only going to get this for 85% of our base acres, and we do have to take into account that government sequestration. But this is how the Agriculture Risk County program works, just for your illustration. The price loss coverage program is a little bit easier to understand because basically what it is anytime the marketing year average price or the price over a full marketing year, so for corn and soybeans, that's September 1st through August 31st. For wheat, that is June 1st through May 31st. Anytime that price falls below our reference price, we trigger a payment. And I've got our reference prices listed here on the right-hand side. Corn is $370, soybeans is $840, wheat is $550. What I've got illustrated over here in the left in this graph is the marketing year average prices for corn in relation to their reference price. The reference price is illustrated by this black line right here at $370, and the red line represents our annual marketing year average prices. And as you can see back here in the back years, 2016 through 2017 and 2018, the marketing year price fell below that black line and triggered a price loss coverage payment. Now this is capped all the way down to the marketing loan rate. So whatever the marketing loan rates are for the specific commodities, which for corn is 220, it comes all the way down to 220. If a marketing year average price fell below 220, you no longer get additional PLC payments for that, but you can put your loan on collateral or your grain on collateral with the government and pick up that additional 220 difference. So just something to keep in mind. Here are the marketing loan rates, as I just talked about. Again, right there, corn is 220, barley is 250. These are the marketing loan rates to help set up that cap on the PLC program. The Ark County program is capped at 10% of the benchmark, whereas the PLC program is capped at the difference between the PLC rate and the marketing loan rate. So just something to keep in mind. You might hear information that those PLC reference prices can increase, and that is true. Congress put in a provision that if the marketing prices exceed the reference prices for a certain number of years by a certain percentage, there is chance that those reference prices can increase. And let me go back just 2 slides. Basically what we're saying here is Congress put a way for this black line to increase. And if this black line increases, let's say up here to $4, right, there would be a bigger difference between this red line and the black line, signifying a bigger payment rate, right? So some producers, if you're wanting to trigger payments, you're going to want this black line higher. Meaning that there's a higher likelihood that you're going to trigger payments. And if you do trigger payments, there's a higher likelihood that those payments are going to be bigger if that reference price is higher. So let's say instead of $370, now we have a $4 reference price. So that is an option in this farm bill. However, it's based on a formula, and it's based on an 85% of a 5-year Olympic moving average. Now, we already talked about an Olympic average. It's dropping the high and the low and averaging the 3 remaining years. Then we're going to take that times 85%. Now these prices all have to be above what our current reference price is. So for corn, that's $370. So we need prices that are significantly higher than $370 to get that reference price up. And so what I've done in the next, so what we've been telling producers is that given our current price scenario, we're going to need some major price increases on corn, soybeans, and wheat to get price is high enough to where we're going to increase that reference price. So we think it's pretty realistic that we're going to stay with $3.70 for corn, $8.40 for soybeans, and $5.50 for wheat. However, there is the potential, and I'm showing that here in the right, these effective reference price maxes. This is the highest they can go. It is a chance that we could increase those reference prices. We're just going to need higher prices to do it, okay? The next thing, and I've talked about this already, in the 2018 Farm Bill, there is the option for the owners of land to update their PLC yields. They do not have to if they do not want to. And we assume that if given the opportunity and the PLC yield update is higher than the current PLC yields that you have on farm or on record with your farm service agency, that you're not going to want to update your yields because you're going to stick with whatever the higher of the two is. So if you get a higher yield with the update, you're going to update. If you have a higher yield currently on record with your FSA office, you're just going to stay with what you currently have. The reason this is important is because those yields, and I'm going to go back to our PLC slide here, those yields are multiplied by the difference between this red line and the black line, or whatever that payment rate is. So if you have a higher yield, you get a higher payment. And that's why we think most producers, if given the chance to update, will, owners will if given the option for a higher yield from the update, they'll go ahead and update, but they do not have to if they do not want to. The decision will last through the remainder of this Farm Bill, so through 2023, and then any future farm bills, if applicable. This is a one-time decision. There's no guarantee that producers and owners are going to get the opportunity to update yields in future farm bills. So therefore, we think it's reasonable for producers and owners to at least look at it. Producers can sign for their owner if they have power of attorney, but it is the owner's decision, or the producers if they have power of attorney. And then everybody must agree. All owners that are listed on the FSA ownership line have to agree. If they don't agree, there is dispute processes, but all owners have to agree. It is the owner's decision. Producers, and then finally, my last bullet point down here, producers can update their yield no matter what commodity program they elect. So the PLC yield update is only relevant really for the PLC program, the price loss coverage program. However, if producers choose the Ark County program, you can go ahead and update your PLC yields. And we actually recommend that you do that, even if you select the Ark County program, from the standpoint that there's no guarantee we're going to get a PLC yield update in future farm bills. And maybe in some of these back years, PLC becomes a very attractive program, and you're going to want those higher yields if given the opportunity, or if this update is giving you higher yields than what you currently have on record. So just something to keep in mind. The way the yield update works is based on a pretty complicated formula, and I don't want to spend a ton of time on this because we have a tool available and a webinar. But it's 90% of the FSA farm yields on your farm of a simple average of the years 2013 through 2017. So those 5 years, 90% of those 5 years of your farm yields. Again, these have to be verifiable farm records. So crop insurance records tend to be the most common. We're going to exclude any years where the crop was zero or not planted. And again, we describe this in our tool and make it easy for producers to do. But then it is reduced, that yield is reduced by a ratio that compares the 2013 through 2017 yields to 2008 to 2012. This is based on a ratio. I'm going to give you the ratios here in the next slide. They're also available in our tool. But the ratios cannot exceed 1 and they cannot fall below 0.9. So if we go, this is basically the simplified version of this. It's the 5-year simple average of verifiable farm yields times 90% times an update factor. So if you don't use our tool, here's the formula, and then here's the yield ratio. So for corn, it's 0.9. For soybeans, it's 0.9, and for wheat, it's 0.9545. So if we go back, if we were doing corn, we'd take our 5 years of corn records times 90% times 0.9, because that's our update factor. If that yield is higher than what we have on record at the FSA office, we're maybe going to consider updating. We don't have to, but it would be to our benefit. It'd be to your benefit to do so. If it is lower than what you currently have on record, you're just going to want to pass on this yield update and take the higher yield if you would like. Now, again, it's your choice, and you can do what you choose. That would just be our recommendation. The next thing, And this is just an example. Again, we have 5 years of yields. We're going to replace this low yielding year here of 45. We're going to take that out. We're going to replace that with a plug yield. We're going to average these 5 years. We're going to take it times 90%. We're going to take it times our corn ratio of 9.9. And that gets us a yield update factor of 130 or 130 bushels to the acre. Again, you know, in this case, we had a simple average of 160 times that 90% times that yield update factor of 0.9 gets us 130. If we have a higher yield on record of 130 already, we're probably going to keep that. However, if this gives us a higher yield, we might consider updating. Again, this is the yield update tool available through the Farm Service Agency. We have a yield update tool on our website as well, and we've done a webinar for your purposes. So again, just to go through the decisions, the producers get to make decisions and elections for 2019 and 2020 together, and then annually every year after that. The decisions are for PLC, can be made on a crop by crop basis. So corn can be PLC, and you can choose Ark County for soybeans if you'd like. PLC is made on 85% of the base acres. There's no requirement to plant that crop on those acres because it's made on base acres, and the supplemental coverage option is available to you. For Ark County, it's made on a crop by crop basis, very similar to PLC. It's made on 85% of the base acres, similar to PLC. There is no requirement to plant the covered commodity on your acres because it's made on your base acres. However, Ark County is different. The election is made on all crops for your farm. So if you choose Ark County, it's for all your crops that you have on that farm. Payments are only made on 65% instead of 85% of your base acres. And then no payment is earned if you do not plant those covered commodities on your farm. Okay, so these are some of the important distinctions for both the Ark County or the Ark County and the Ark individual programs. The supplemental coverage option through crop insurance is not available. So just something to keep in mind as you move forward. These are graphs from our decision tool that we have on our website, and we also have a webinar based on that. But as you can see, we've got here, this slide shows you the historical performance of Champaign County here in Ohio. Again, this black line is the historical benchmark. The red bars are our actual revenue. A payment is triggered when the red bars fall below the black line. So we see that Ark County made a payment early in the last Farm Bill. The Farm Bill is signified by this dotted black line, by the way. But it did not make Ark County payments in the back end. And we've got the payments over here on the side. If we look at the PLC program, a PLC payment was made when this red line, the marketing year average price, fell below our reference price, which is that 370 black line here. And so we see a PLC payment was made in 2016, 2017, and pretty close to one in 2018. What we see over here in this chart is these are the red bars signify the Ark County payments, and we see that Ark County paid in the first 3 years, but not the last 2 years. But we see that the PLC payment paid in the last 4 years. If we average that over the 5 years, because it was a 5-year decision, we see that Ark County paid more annually if we averaged all those together. Keep in mind, they got an $89 payment in 14, an $87 payment in 15, and an $80 payment in 16, but all that averaged to a $51 per payment annually. Okay, and it was bigger than our PLC payment. I would not recommend making decisions this way. I would recommend making decisions based on when the payments are going to trigger, but we do know that most producers made their decisions based on which payment was going to pay them the most over the lifetime of the Farm Bill. If we look ahead, we see that Ark County for 2019 and 2020, and I'm figuring in a 15% yield reduction in 2019. It looks like a payment for Ark County could be made in 2019. No Ark County payment is expected in 2020. Again, this is made on base acres and 85% of those base acres, so it's just something to keep in mind. But we also need to look at the PLC program. And at least from our analysis, PLC is expected to trigger payments in 2019 and 2020. If we get substantially higher market prices, we could see this change. But at least from our analysis right now, is that over the 2 years, PLC looks to be a more favorable program over the 2 years of the Farm Bill. If we look at soybeans, this is the historical performance of Champaign County, Ohio for soybeans. Again, the PLC price never, or the marketing year price never got below that reference price. So PLC never triggered a payment in Champaign County or countrywide actually. And it only triggered an Ark County payment for soybeans in 2015, and that's what's represented over here. They got a $23 payment per acre for 85% of their base acres in 2015, but no Ark County payments anytime else. If we look ahead, again, I'm figuring in a 15% yield reduction in 2019, just given the terrible planting season we had. And you see the gap here signifying that we could expect a payment in 2019 if market conditions stayed where they're at and we saw yield reduction come in at 15%. Now keep in mind, this is a county average yield, not your individual yield. County averages tend to be less variable than individual yields. And again, we're not expecting an Ark County payment in 2020. You can play with all of this in our tool and do what if scenarios if you'd like. For PLC, we are expecting potentially a soybean PLC payment in 2020. Again, this could change if we get a trade deal with China and significantly increase our soybean prices, or if we have another year where soybean yields come in substantially lower and increase that national price. But as of right now, Champaign County looks like Ark County might pay more than PLC, just given that we're not 100% sure how low that soybean price is going to go below that $8.40 reference price. Just to show you what yield does to the different equations, what I've got in here is this is a 15% yield drop in 2019, and you can see Ark County, $20. I've got a 30% yield drop for Champaign County at $26 now, and I've got a 5% yield drop for Champaign County and no payment is made. So it's important, and this is just signifying the importance of at least waiting a little bit and seeing what your county average yields are going to be to make sure that you've got the best information to make a decision. But don't wait too long, because you have to make this decision before March 15th. Again, here's just a reminder of that calendar and basically what I just said. You have all the way to March 15th to make your decision for 2019 and 2020. We still got a long way to go to look at prices and yields for the year, so it may be worth waiting just a little bit to see what's going to be the best option for you. There's tools available. This is an example of the decision tool put out by the FarmDoc team at the University of Illinois. We also have a decision tool available on our website, and there's a separate video explaining that, how to use it, how to make that decision. We encourage you to go to go.osu.edu/farmbill2019. Again, that's go.osu.edu/2019. And that'll give you information about all of our Farm Bill programs and decision tools available. Here's a look at our decision tool. And again, we have a webinar that walks through this, but basically shows you the graphs that I just showed you in this presentation. But I want to talk about the supplemental coverage option really quick. It was first introduced in the 2014 Farm Bill. It's an addition to crop insurance products. So you can choose an underlying crop insurance yield and revenue program that's an individual coverage, not area coverage. So SEO is not available for area coverage programs, but it is an area coverage program itself. It operates on a benchmark very similar to our Ark County program that we saw earlier, and that's why it's not available on area policies, but it is available on individual policies. And has our enrollment period that ends March 15th, just like other crop insurance programs as well. Again, I showed you this chart earlier, but supplemental coverage option is only available if you select the price loss coverage program. Given that now all the election dates are March 15th, you should know what you're going to choose for a commodity program by the time you make your crop insurance decisions. So keep in mind, if you do agriculture risk, individual or county, you cannot do supplemental coverage, but you can under the price loss coverage program. So what is the purpose of the supplemental coverage option? It provides additional coverage on top of an already existing individual policy, but not area policies or index policies, so like a rain index policy or something like that. It allows coverage equal to 86%. So if you buy individual coverage at 60%, you pay your individual premium at 60% of your individual coverage, and then SCO covers you all the way up to 86%. It uses the same coverage as your underlying policy. So if you have an underlying yield policy, SCO is only based on the county or the SCO area yields. If you have a revenue policy, it's based on the SCO area revenue. Okay, so just something to keep in mind. It is designed to make PLC, that price loss coverage, comparable to Ark County. This is why it's only available to the price loss coverage program. Ark County makes payments in a range from 76 to 86% and is only available on PLC elections. Graphically, this is what it looks like. Again, if you select 50% for your underlying policy, provides you coverage all the way up to 36%, or you get 36% SCO coverage to get you up to 86%. If you have 85% individual coverage, it gives you all the way up to 85%, and then SCO gives you an additional 1% to get you up to 86%. So you can see how this is working to get you up to 86%. If we look at what we mean by premiums, what I've got here in the blue column here, these are farm basic premiums. So we see that for 85% coverage, we can get 85% coverage for this county, Union County, Ohio, at an APH of 166 bushels on 160 acres with a $4 projected price. We can get a premium, or we can get 85% individual coverage for $33 or $34. If we add on SEO, we're paying an additional 90 cents to get that additional 1% to get us up to 86% for a total premium of $34.87. Okay, but let's look down here at 50%. So if we select a 50% insurance policy, we're going to pay $2.07 on that individual policy. And we're going to pay $8.86 for that SCO coverage for a total premium of 86% at $10.93. So $10.93 for 86% coverage versus $34.87. Again, this 85% coverage is made up mostly of your individual coverage and 1% for area coverage, whereas down here 50% is, or 50% of the 86 is individual, and the remaining 36 is the area coverage. So just something to know what you're giving up when you select an area policy. They do operate a little bit different than individual yield and revenue products. Why is supplemental coverage premium so much lower? Well, they're subsidized at a higher rate. There's less chance that area policies are going to trigger a payment because area yields tend to be less variable, and so they're usually less risky. And so they're insured at a higher rate, and they're subsidized at a higher rate. And you see here that the basic optional units are subsidized at 80 or 38% for an 85% insurance policy, 53% for an enterprise policy, whereas SCO premium assistance is 65% across the board. So they're subsidized at a higher rate, makes them a little cheaper, makes the policy a little bit better. So the nuts and the bolts. There is a possibility that revenue protection and SCO can both make payments in the same year. Think 2012, a drought year where both programs triggered payments. It is possible for one to trigger and not the other, and that's what's represented in the next two bullet points. And it's possible that neither an area policy or your individual policy trigger a payment. The last few years outside of 2019, we didn't have any crop insurance payments, and that would be representative here in this fourth bullet point. So just keep in mind that all these options are on the table when you select an SCO policy. Again, the pros and cons of doing SCO. If you're a producer and you traditionally buy high coverage levels of crop insurance, an 85% revenue policy, you're getting 86% coverage, so you're paying just a little bit more to get up to, or you're paying a little bit less to get up to that 86% coverage. You're giving up some of your top end. Remember, area yields tend to be less variable, so you're giving up some of that variation at the top to get a little bit higher, but you're replacing it with less costly premiums. However, if you're a producer and you tend to buy lower coverage, so 70 or 75% insurance, you can get up to 86% at a low cost, but maybe you don't want that higher coverage. Maybe you're comfortable with 70 and 75, so it doesn't really make sense to pay more money to get more coverage. It's totally up to you, but we at least see that for high insurance coverages, those people that like 80 and 85% coverage, this is an option to get that coverage at a lower premium. You're just giving up some top end potential, but it is at a lower price. Is SCO right for my operation? It's not available if you're enrolled in ARC County or ARC IC. So if you select those programs, you're automatically out. We think it's a relationship of your base acres to planted acres. Your supplemental coverage is a crop insurance program, so it's based on planted acreage, where PLC is based on 85% of your base acreage. Remember, that doesn't necessarily have to be what you plant. So if your planted acres of, let's say, soybeans is higher than your base acres of soybeans, then SCO could be a cheaper option to get higher coverage levels, okay? We also encourage you to look at your individual yields compared to your county yields. Remember, SCO is a county or area-based insurance policy, and so depending on how variable your yields are to your county yields is going to play an important role. And then again, Under a PLC, the producer has decisions to make related to crop insurance. You can add SCO if you'd like at cheaper premium rate or cheaper rates. You can buy higher coverage levels on an underlying policy. Most Ohio farms already have high coverage levels, 80 or 85%. So if you want to get cheaper coverage, SEO is a possibility, but you are giving up something. Again, remember my story about this year, those area policies did not make prevent plant payments. And so you only get a prevent plant payment on what your underlying policy is. In this case, it might have been 60 or 65%, even though you had an 86% coverage with SCO. So just some things to keep in mind. And then just a final thought. The same programs exist for ARC and PLC with some minor modifications, and we went through that. Enrollment goes for 2019 and really 2020 goes through March 15th. It's a 2-year decision, and you need to make that decision before March 15th. If you do not, you give up your right to make a decision and you lose your 2019 payment. It becomes an annual decision after that. There is a yield update. It is the owner of the land's responsibility. Does the update give you a higher yield? That's what we think will decide whether you choose to take the update or not. The best fit for your operation will depend on your risk preference for risk management. Do you want to protect against catastrophic price declines with the price loss coverage program, that low price? Do you want to protect against shallow revenue, right? A drop in revenue or yields? Or do you just want to pick the program that's going to pay you the most over the next 2 years? And again, we've got tools and other people have got tools for you to use, but I encourage you to think about your risk and what you're willing to live with if it happens. If price falls out and you're okay with that, ARC County might make a lot of sense. If you want to protect against low price loss coverage makes sense. And then again, doing PLC allows you to choose SCO coverage, which allows you to get higher crop insurance coverage at a cheaper rate. You're giving up some of that top end potential because you're choosing an area-based policy, and area-based policies tend to be less risky and therefore they pay out less often, but it is a cheaper rate to get coverage on insurance products. And with that, math is always fun. We thank you for listening. If we can ever be any of help to you, just let us know. Our contact information is available on the website. We thank you for listening. We hope to see you around the state of Ohio soon, and go Bucks.